thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. It's raining and you're still here. We're very excited tonight to have all of you in the room, and we're equally excited to all of you in the room right here. Thank you, some of you for coming back or coming for the first time. It's a great honor to have you here. My colleagues will introduce the panelists in person, but I wanted to say one thing about what the Center for the Humanities does at NYU and why we have this panel here. So we have a series of talks about the environmental humanities, and we are engaged in questions that cannot be confined to one discipline, to either sociology or the law or psychology or economics, but that intersect in various ways. So I'll give you my 2-minute assignment, because this is my job, actually. I'm a vice provost. So I'll give you 3 questions, very basic questions. They're actually not so basic at all, from the philosopher Immanuel Kant. This is my job, I'm a college professor. Kant had 3 questions. What can I know? What can I know? You can use your senses. What can you taste? What can you smell? What can you feel? What can I know? Second question that Kant had, around 1800 for us, is what should I do? What is my capacity? What are my skills? What can I acquire? What talents can I have? And the third question that we want to look at tonight is, after what can I know, and these people are going to help us think about that, and what should I do, is what may I hope for? What kind of life could I lead? What kind of life could I accomplish? Could it be actually a plant-based future, for instance? So we're going to have these 3 questions. What can I know through my senses and myself, and through knowledge, which is the point of a university, and we brought all of you to a university to teach us something. What should we do as people, as individuals, personal choices, and as a collective? And I really want to sort of salute you for coming here together as a community that is going to upend and change the way we do things. And lastly, what can we hope for? And these 4 panelists are going to give us some inspiration of what to hope for. What could the present and the future be like? I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Colin here from Environmental Studies, who's going to introduce the panelists. And again, I want to thank all of you and also our staff for pulling this event together. For us, for my colleagues on this panel, it is a great inspiration to see all of you tonight. Thank you.
I'm Colin Jerolmack. As Uli said, I'm in Environmental Studies. I'm also the Director of Animal Studies Initiative here at NYU. My job tonight is really just to be the hype man. I'm kind of like the Flava Flav to the Chuck D's over here. This panel's called Vegan Living, and my qualifications for this are that I'm vegan and I'm living. I'm not an athlete. I'm not an athlete, nor am I, but I do eat Chloe's cupcakes, so I feel like that qualifies me as well. I'm going to briefly introduce the panelists. So Uli Baer is a professor of German and comparative literature. As he mentioned, he's vice provost for Faculty Arts, Humanities, Diversity. He's co-founder of the Environmental Humanities series and the author of We Are But a Moment, a climate change thriller, of which I'll just give you a little teaser. He has a chapter called Beef, in which he talks about the summer before or the summer after that last hamburger. So that's Uli. And then we also have Yanoula Athanassakis. Is that the first time I tried to say your last name? She's the Vice Assistant Provost, co-founder of the Environmental Humanities series. She also teaches a class here at NYU called Being Vegan, and she's the author recently of Environmental Justice in Contemporary U.S. Narratives. Okay, so for the main attractions here, we've got David Carter, starting at the other end, UCLA grad. Do that. All right. As many of you may know, David was drafted into the NFL in 2011 by the Arizona Cardinals. Over the next 5 seasons, he also played for the Dallas Cowboys, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Chicago Bears. What brings him here tonight is a life-changing event that happened to him around the time that he was released by the Dallas Cowboys and began to realize the toll that football was taking on his body. He watched the documentary Forks Over Knives, and in that moment decided to join his wife in committing to a vegan diet, both for his own body and for the good of animals. David is now known as the 300-pound vegan, which makes him about 3 of me. And he uses his platform to be a voice for animals and to fight for food justice in underserved communities. Next up, we have Chloe Coscarelli. Now, Chloe is the first, and I think still the only, I don't follow these things, but the vegan chef to capture the top prize of the Food Network's Cupcake Wars. Since then, she's been recognized for bringing vegan cuisine to a mainstream audience as an award-winning chef, successful entrepreneur, and best-selling cookbook author. She's known for her bright, colorful, and imaginative and tasteful recipes that use fresh and healthy and, of course, vegan ingredients. And I should say, but still gives at least someone like me the satisfaction of kind of junky food sometimes. She's published 3 best-selling cookbooks. In 2015, she opened her first restaurant just 2 blocks away from here, By Chloe. And thanks to the amount of Closest cupcakes that my wife and I purchased, she was able to open a dessert annex next door recently. And since then, she's also opened up other branches in the area, bringing healthy and satisfying vegan, plant-based dishes to New York City. And we have also got Joshua Katcher. Joshua teaches fashion at Parsons, the New School. In 2008, he started the first men's ethical lifestyle website, The Discerning Brute. And in 2010, he spearheaded the first vegan, ethically made menswear fashion brand called Brave Gentleman, which has been featured among other places in GQ, Forbes, and Complex. And if you need a wardrobe upgrade, as I clearly do, check him out. So he's also received awards and accolades from PETA, Coco Echo Magazine, The Wild Magazine, and Veg News Magazine. He's also a contributing writer to Huffington Post Style and other outlets, and he's been interviewed on major TV networks as a fashion expert. Welcome, Joshua. And finally, we have Dominic Thompson. He's a He is a leading vegan entrepreneur, founder of Crazies and Weirdos, which is a successful New York-based startup company that produces hip, sustainable, eco-friendly clothing dedicated to the animal rights movement. For millennials in the audience, it's like the supreme of vegan clothing. That's the way I think about it. He's also the founder of Iron Brewcall, a sports and fitness brand with plans to open training facilities in 2019. And he's an athlete, whose weekly training schedule includes cycling, swimming, running, calisthenics, boxing, CrossFit, cross-training, weight and powerlifting. And he also competes year-round in 10 to 12 endurance races per year, including marathons, triathlons, and ultra races. I should add, all while I sit on my sofa eating Closest cupcakes. He also spreads his message on social media, where he has a following over 150,000 fans. If I can get you to follow me on Instagram, Don, I'll have 26. So sign up. And finally, he's received global recognition for his activism on behalf of animals. He's been featured in NPR, ABC News, Men's Muscle and Fitness Magazine, Esquire, Thrive Magazine, Origins Magazine, PETA, and more. So my job is done here, and now we get to the exciting part. Thanks, everybody.
So I think this is a great strategy for the Center for the Humanities to involve Environmental Studies and Animal Studies Initiative, invite them politely, and then say, could you please do all of the work for our panels? It'd be really, really amazing and funny. Nicola, you were amazing last year. Thank you, and hello, because Vegan Living was another really energizing event. So we'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. Needless to say, universities don't have expansive budgets, and the panelists that you see here this evening were kind enough to still come and speak to us about how you live a vegan lifestyle. So many of the questions we got about this panel involved, will there be food? Will there be cupcakes? Will you feed us? And I think it speaks to the fact that veganism is still very much thought of as food. And so when we did vegan athletes, that was a large percentage of the questions were how you fuel your bodies. And both David and Doms will remember that. And so we wanted to think more about how is veganism, and this is the question that we have for our panelists this evening, how is veganism a part of your life? How and how much is it a part of your lifestyle? Because we're really thinking solely about veganism in general as a food-centered lifestyle choice. And so we'd like to think a little bit beyond that. So I'd like to just start with the question, how much is veganism and how is it a part of your life? And so David, we're just gonna start with you and come down this way. Welcome.
Okay. Hello, the mic, okay, it's on. All right. So just what is veganism and what it is to me?
Yeah, how much is veganism, how is it a part of your life?
Okay.
And how much is it?
Okay, I only got 2 minutes? All right.
No, you have however much time you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Never mind, I remember last year, never mind.
I'm on the other side. All right, so not all the time.
Thank you, you can spot me. All right, so So veganism to me, I don't just call it veganism, I call it plant-based. I feel like, man, that's a really good question. All right, veganism to me. First of all, I like to say veganism, I feel like plant-based has saved my life because I was 23 years old. For those of you who don't know my story, I played in the NFL, and while I was in the NFL, I was dealing with heart disease, pretty much. High blood pressure is a precursor to heart disease. I had high blood pressure. I was on high blood pressure medication, anti-inflammatories, painkillers. I had really bad tendonitis. I couldn't do like push-ups. I couldn't do a bench press. It was hard for me to do any of that stuff. Yet I was still a 305-pound defensive lineman in the NFL struggling with all these old man illnesses. So I watched the Forks Over Knives documentary, and it just changed my life, educated me on what tendonitis was. I'm dealing with tendonitis, working with these doctors, and they're like, man, it's just got some inflammation in your joints, tendonitis, it's regular, fine, take this pill and you'll get over it. Put some ice on it, or, build the muscles around the joints and that'll help with whatever. This is the team doctors. And, they were quick to give me a Band-Aid, but those Band-Aids weren't helping me get better, and they weren't going to help me down the road, when I get older, and I'm just going to keep taking those pills. And, it saved my life because it gave me a way to control my own health and to manage my own health and be in charge of my own life. And I wasn't slave to those, to the quick fixes anymore, or the horrible information that the doctors are giving you. You're thinking you go to these doctors for health advice, and these fools don't even take nutrition classes. How are you gonna help me get better and you don't even take nutrition classes? And so, but veganism to me, and I'm a rapper. No, I'm not. All right, so so that's part of it. When you start to learn, you become intrigued and you start to learn. You get one nugget of information and it just grows into all of these things, and you start realizing like, wow, this is a healthier way for me to eat. And then your body, once you start doing it, then your body changes, and then that proves your hypothesis that this is the best way to do it. And then you start learning so many things. For me, it started off as like, you meant like, man, I don't need, it was health for me. But then after health, it was like, man, we don't need to eat these animals. We're killing these animals for what? And then you start thinking about like, man, I wonder how that animal feels before we kill it to eat it. And then you start thinking about everything, every aspect of life, of the animal's life and your life. And you start thinking about like vibrations. I'm black, so vibrations are like, you start thinking about it like vibrations, like, when they talk about the reggae music. But it's true. When you kill an animal, you think animals don't have vibrations? You know what I'm saying? Like when they kill the animal and the animal's crying, you see these videos of how animals like a cow will get killed, or they'll take the calf away from the mom, and the mom's crying, or they have a tear falling down their face because they know that they're about to, once they pass this fence, I'm gonna die. And these vibrations, all it is just cortisol or adrenaline running through the body. That's all vibrations are. That's a scientific term for it. And then that chemical runs through the body of the animal. We kill it, and then they cut it up, chop it up. That cortisol and that adrenaline is running through, is now an ingredient of the meat that you're eating, and you're eating that negative energy. You're eating those negative vibrations. And then you start learning stuff like that. So you start learning stuff like that, and it's like, man, it's right in your face. It's hidden in plain sight. And so, like, for me, that was health thing. Or I was telling you about heart disease, which is high blood pressure is a precursor to heart disease. Then you start thinking about the social, just how it is, how food is, how basically, who was it? It was one of the presidents who said food is power. And then you start thinking about that, because when you're vegan, food is everything for you, right? And then you start thinking about how is food power. And I start, like you said, I do a lot of social justice and stuff, and talking about food deserts and stuff. And you start thinking about, how is the food distributed? Food is, if you look around, you guys live in New York. Fifth Avenue is way different than Brooklyn. You can see how there's grocery stores everywhere over there in the nice areas, the well-to-do areas. But then you go down to the hood and there's nothing. There's no grocery stores. You have bodega, like gun shop. I don't know, right? But then you have to think about the history. I was a history major at UCLA. You have to think about history. How did that shit happen? How did that get set up? And it makes you, because it makes you think like, why is it that food is distributed differently in some neighborhoods than it is in the other neighborhoods? And a lot of people don't think it has to do with veganism, but to me, it definitely does. Because when you look at it, like the communities that are not getting the good food are, let's see, how am I going to tell you? How am I going to say this? Okay, so there's communities of color that are just flooded with unhealthy foods, fast food restaurants, and all that stuff. And this is how it has to do with veganism. The #1 seller of animal products in the world, McDonald's, KFC, Burger King, KFC, all of these fast food restaurants. And the processed foods, they're processed food companies, #1, they're subsidized. They're subsidizing, think about it. It takes 6,000 gallons of water to make one hamburger patty, but you're going to subsidize that and all the labor that it takes and put it in the hood. What is the reason behind that, right? And it makes you start thinking about all of these things. And so veganism is more than just, it has a lot to do with saving the animals. It has a lot to do with health, but it has a lot to do with the people for me too. Because when you break it down, and I'm gonna wrap it up, when you break it down, it's just deep, because the thing that it's everything. Food is everything, because that's what we do more than anything. More than we shower, more than we shit, we're eating food all day, every day, It's like when we want to feel good, we go eat. When we go Friday nights with our friends, we're eating something, And so, it has to do with everything. Health, it has to do with the way you look, it has to do with the way you feel. And veganism, I feel like the plant-based lifestyle, vegan lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's the answer to the world, like the answer to all of our problems, hunger, all kind of stuff, health issues, and that's just my personal opinion. And so, and then I'm not done yet. And then I'm gonna wrap it up. But okay. So I was telling y'all about food deserts. And how they're flooded in the inner city areas, right? There's a heavy concentration of grocery store food deserts in inner city areas. No grocery stores, fast food restaurants, and liquor stores everywhere, right? And so I was telling you about processed meats and milk and dairy products being sold in inner city areas. Now we know there's no secret that the general population for inner city areas is people of color, black, brown, whatever. Man, there's a study by Dr. Milton Mills, PCRM. You guys can look him up. He's a doctor of PCRM. And I'm sure most people of color know this. Most people of color are lactose intolerant, right? So it's like, so you think about it, you add 2 and 2, you add it together, shit. It makes sense. Like, so it's not good for people of color to be eating all these animal products and dairy products, but where are all of these things concentrated? In inner city areas. And that's just real life. And after going around doing all these speeches and learning about redlining, which is something I think you should learn about, is how our food is distributed through, in neighborhoods, is redlining. That was actually something that stemmed from Jim Crow, which is, basically used to separate people of color from white people, or they called people of color back in those days in 1910 undesirables. And that law is still in the books today, and that's what shapes our food system. And that's why you can hop in the car today and drive from Fifth Avenue down to Brooklyn, and you can see the food change. So it's interesting when you learn like how veganism, it's just, it's a lifestyle, it's to save the animals, but it's way bigger than that. And I don't think people understand that. And so I'll pass it.
I want to say so I want to have Professor Carter here for every freshman class at NYU of 6,000 students arriving on this campus and learning that knowledge is empowerment and how to make connections. And also, I want to commend you for setting the bar so high for the rest of the panel. Good luck. That's awesome. Wow.
So I think just one thing I was going to say, Joshua, before was that, David, we're all struggling to figure out the right terminology for veganism, right? Is it cruelty-free? Is it animal-free? Do you refer to food? This is something a colleague of mine in environmental studies had mentioned today, which is, do you say that this is a animal fat biscuit, or do you say it's a buttermilk biscuit, right?
Call it what it is.
Exactly. How can you set the, to borrow your phrase, to set the bar, or to think about the baseline as being something that you are setting and not just being in reaction to, right? So that we're not just always talking about the absence of something, but instead we're the presence. And then what people have to think about are the gendered, racial, economic terms in which we think about things, including food, including fashion. And I think that's why we really wanted to have a more cohesive viewpoint of how to live a veganic or animal product free or human cruelty free lifestyle. And so Joshua, one thing I wanted to ask you was fashion innovations, and also just do you get questions about vegan fashion, being a vegan fashion designer versus just fashion designer? Are people very curious, and what does veganism mean to you? Like how does it connect to your industry, and how much?
For specifically speaking about the fashion industry, last semester I taught a course at Parsons. It was the senior thesis course for the graduating senior designers. And that was the first things first, no fur. And when we actually just banned fur from the fur industry from being able to approach students with incentives at Parsons, and that's a really big step. So that's some good news. But the section of senior thesis that I taught was called Systems, and this is actually touching a lot on what you were saying, how veganism is a lifestyle that unveils ideology, and it unveils these systems that we live in that we take for granted. And ideology is something that's really hard to see when you're in it. It's invisible. And when you take a step back, and one of those ways of taking a step back is through veganism, it suddenly unveils all of these systems that we live in, the food system, the fashion system, and these systems have a lot to do with power. And that is one of the main things that I look at in my research with fashion, is what is the relationship between fashion and power? And I won't repeat a lot of, you made amazing points, and I agree with all of them, and I don't need to go on for too long. But I think that when we talk about veganism, there's a struggle to come up with the right terminology. What we're really struggling for is a way to make it universally appealing, a way to sort of say, hey, this isn't a religion, this isn't about a pursuit of perfection, this is about a way of addressing systems. And that's sort of how I look at it, because when you look at it as a way of addressing systems, then it's always about how do you become more effective, not how do you become perfect or how do you have clean hands for yourself, but how do you make change, how do we influence the kind of change that we want to make.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chloe. You are a true entrepreneur. We're so honored to have you, and very interested to hear what it's like to be a vegan entrepreneur. Like, how does that spilled over to other areas of, beyond making cupcakes and making a name for yourself? Have you thought about expanding into other areas, and what is it like to be in the public eye as a spokesperson for veganism? What is it like for you, and what do you think of as what does veganism sort of mean to you?
Sure. So I've been vegan for about 14 years now. And, at a young age, I just realized that it made no sense at all to be eating animals. I think a lot of kids have a really easy time having that realization where they're like, wait a minute, we're eating animals? That doesn't make any sense. So it was a pretty easy switch for me. And then luckily, really getting involved in vegan food and cooking and experimenting, I was like, and it tastes so much better than non-vegan food. Like, why isn't everyone doing this? So I just fell in love with food and had a lot of fun playing around. But I think, being vegan for so long, it's wonderful because you are the consumer. So I really do believe that vegan food is the food of the future. So that is, the future of all the consumers that we'll be serving. And so having that advantage of, living vegan myself and going to the grocery store myself and, having to feed myself, and then being able to create a product for people to consume. It just gives you such an insight. Whereas a lot of, corporations have to do like focus groups and research and hire people to figure out like what do people want, what's going to sell. But really living the lifestyle that your brand is, you don't need to do any of that because you can basically just produce what you want to eat. Maybe that's how I do everything. But I'm like, if I could eat something every day, what would it be? What do I want to see differently? Like, how do I want this more accessible for myself? And that's a great way to inform business decisions in a way that touches other people in an authentic way. And I think in terms of being an entrepreneur, it's definitely a rocky road. Everyone goes through. The highs are really high and the lows are really low. I think being a vegan entrepreneur makes it actually so much easier in the sense that I always have something I can come back to as a reason that makes my challenges just seem so small and petty, like compared to the greater thing that I'm working towards. So having that really strong sense of why you're doing what you're doing can really help you get through some of those times. And I try to take like just a minute out of every day to kind of remember, why I started. And I think that's really helpful in dealing with obstacles. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Doms. You are a social media maven along with the other people on the panel, and we honestly are sort of clueless academics. I walked into the room and saw Joshua and Doms, and I said, I was grading, and then my pant zipper broke, so I have a binder clip in my pants. Like, I'm really sorry. We're like running around eating not really great cuisine. So it's a little embarrassing. Like Colin, I feel some sort of shame in front of people who are just really, really good at marketing and being authentic to who they are in the public space. And I know that even when we were posting about this, suddenly there were all these really great posts on social media, and they had all been created by the panelists really quickly and with no sweat. So, I know we asked you this in part last year, but I feel like you might be at a different place in your career. So Doms, what would you say about how you came to veganism, what it means to you, and how you mobilize social media successfully?
Sure.
We also shared a mic last year because we're running out of money at NYU. Please, please donate to the Humanities.
We're doing fine. Tonight we're doing fine. Thank you, Doms. You can have a mic.
So I first had an experience as a child with the way, and David talked about this. I'm actually a product of a very bad neighborhood, a very violent neighborhood. I'm from Chicago originally, west side of Chicago, and some of you younger folks out there probably know what Chirac means and between the violence and stuff like that. And I'm also an ex-gang member myself. So I get it. I see things, and I used to see things. I used to do things, and but it started early for me, breaking up dog fights and fighting with my friends that was just being boys, throwing stray rocks at cats and dogs and stuff. So I always had that compassion at a young age, and even when my mother would try to serve me, and a lot of you guys heard this story before, but she'll try to serve me fried chicken wings, and I'll push it back. I felt like there was little arms. I did. I would fight with her really, really bad. So I made that connection early, and but she got smart. She started serving me fish sticks and chicken breast that was nothing but white meat, hiding the cartilage in the actual meat, and that went okay for a while. And then I grew into, got into running the streets and stuff like that in Chicago, and so I got kind of away from that original connection that I made with respect to that energy that David was talking about. Because energy is real. Any harm you do into this world, it comes back in some type of way. And saying all I had to say is, you know, some of the bad things I used to do throughout my teenage years circled back and it caught up with me when I was like 20, 21, right when I was in college and getting ready to finish college, and I ended up had to go through a situation that put me away, took me out of society. And you should know what that means, but I had to go away. And it was there that I found this lifestyle of veganism. It was there that I re-engineered my thinking, my body, and everything, and I decided to go meatless while I was incarcerated, for those of you that don't know. And I ate a lot of beans, ate a lot of rice, made a lot of gains, supplement free. Very, very real, incredible progress considering the fact what was happening to me at that time. So yeah, and listen, I can go on and on about that part of my life, but then I exit the system and, you know, went back into school and picked up a position in healthcare, and I excelled in healthcare. Thank God, you know, what happened to me with respect to my former gang and drug-related days of pushing drugs and stuff like that did not have an impact on my corporate future with what I was doing. And fast forward, you know, I'm 38 now. This all happened, and when I got home, I was like 26. Got indicted and had to go away around 22, 23, and then I came home about 26. And I think it's because of that experience, being treated like property, being told where to sleep and shit and these different things. It really had a severe mental impact on me, where I'm really passionate about any living being that's being taken advantage of or being destroyed or being treated like property. That's very personal to me because I've been there, except I wasn't destroyed. They tried to break me, tried to break my soul, but they didn't. So that's my closeness to with respect to why you guys that do follow me see why I'm very passionate about what I talk about on social media. And in terms of social media, listen, when Instagram came out about 5-6 years ago, a friend of mine was like, you know, you should get on Instagram and post some of the things you know, on your mind and what you're working out about. And I did, but it kind of went left. You know, it really went left, meaning I posted some of my physical activity, but I also posted a lot of things that I knew that I wanted to educate people about. And I think people have seen that as refreshing, seeing that here it is, this pretty big-sized guy that's not your typical rich roll endurance-looking athlete, talking about real social issues, talking about real change that needs to happen. And I think the people that have been following me for years really know that, and they can appreciate me being authentic, because you get on social media now, you see a lot of people that are vain and trying to sell you products and stuff like that. That's never been my mission. My mission is to connect with everyone and really try to have some type of impact on the world. So I think that's really how organically my social media account really took off. And to this day, I still feel like I'm a man of integrity, and I really speak my mind. I don't hold back from nobody, and that's just the Chicago in me. That's the streets in me.
Maybe we can go back to that. All four of you are incredibly inspiring for doing something yourselves, but also actually taking the time and making the effort to educate people, to share your knowledge, and to have a commitment to sort of transforming the world, because there's a very dominant culture, and in my book I talk about this, that America identifies with meat very strongly in so many ways. And I wrote this book for a specific reason, because I actually couldn't answer the questions that you all answer so eloquently in one field only. So I wrote a book of fiction, because I felt the questions were so difficult and I had to get an emotional connection to them. But I'm interested in how you translate your daily practice into this kind of what you're teaching, what you're doing. And maybe to go back to that, because you are kind of, you actually exhibit and you are what you want other people to be, but you're not proselytizing and lecturing. You're actually just allowing people to learn on their own. So maybe if one of you can go there and sort of, that's a really unusual and rare thing, to actually inspire people to your knowledge rather than telling them what to think. So maybe how to translate from where you are to how you think people connect to that and what they can do themselves.
I think that most people, well, I'd like to believe that most people share similar values in an ideal way. And there are sociopaths among us. I hope they're a minority. But I think that most people don't want to knowingly harm or knowingly cause societal evils. But they do so because it's just how things are, or tradition, or whatever excuse there is. So I think that when you approach this lifestyle in a way to try to make it appealing to others, it has to be, at least from a fashion standpoint, from my standpoint, and I think it also makes sense from a food standpoint and from an athletic standpoint, that it has to be aspirational and it has to be desirable. It can't just be an alternative or the morally correct thing to do. Making it desirable and exciting is so much a part of the culture that we live in, and that changes how it's approached.
And to add to that, I think it's important. Josh is right. The vegan community is so divided in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of people that feel like it's my way or the highway and stuff like that. But I think it's important for all of us to realize majority of us been there. I wasn't born vegan. I wasn't born as Jedi Knight, came out pure. I just wasn't. But I'm probably one of the most loudest, outspoken activists. I consider myself activist that you would meet. But we had to take back, there's nothing wrong with assertive education, okay? But when you're being aggressive and calling people names, you got to remember you used to be that way. You know what I mean? You used to be that way. And considering the fact, I seen my first murder at 5 years old. And that, I put myself back in that state of mind, like people out here got other shit going on in their lives, and the last thing on their mind is probably not, let's save the world type of stuff. There's a lot of real issues out here going on. So we got to sometimes, take a more of an assertive approach, approach that person, educate them. But listen, you've been there too. Most of us have. So we just have to really approach them the right way with respect to that, and be a walking billboard too. Be about it. Walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. Don't sit in your tree throwing rocks down at the people that are really trying to make change.
Thank you. I think. Chloe, I know you're going to go next. I was just going to say that so many questions last year during Vegan Athletes, and since then even, is how to live vegan at home if your partner isn't vegan or if your family isn't vegan, and a lot of that centered around food. And a lot of people come to us actually with relationship questions, like how they can convert their partner to veganism. We're not qualified to answer any of those questions, but they still come. And so, Chloe, I feel like you're I know you're actually the perfect next person to answer this question. So what would you say? Not about the relationship.
Okay, so it kind of all ties together. So I think that kind of weaving both of those questions together in terms of, how to be someone who can inspire other people to make, the best choices for themselves. I think that's exactly what it is. It's really hard to create change that's going to stick when someone's feeling forced or like they're just following direction. When someone makes a choice for themselves, it's like when you have a friend that's in a bad relationship. If you just say, don't date him, they're not going to listen to you. But if they realize for themselves that maybe there's somebody better out them, it's like, oh, okay, they're going to follow that. There's some things that you just can't really tell people to do based on your own will, but you can help educate them to make that choice for themselves. So in terms of social media, like we were talking about, I think that, trying to, all of us having social media platforms, like trying to show people that this is not about perfection, and it's not about all or nothing. Like, change is progress, and we should celebrate that every step of the way. So even with cooking, I mean, my mom always said there are some days that you just can't cook. And it's so true, even for me. There are some days where just everything goes wrong, everything falls, burns, whatever. So trying to kind of let people in on that so they don't feel like, oh, well, I could never do that. So I'm just not even going to try veganism. In my book, I write about how when I was younger and I was baking with my mom, she really taught me how to cook and bake. We were going to a party and we made brownies, and something went wrong, and the brownies were like super underdone and just like raw on the inside. It was fine because they was vegan, so they were, they didn't have any raw eggs, so they were safe. And I was like, what are we gonna do? They're not perfect. We should just throw them out. Maybe we just shouldn't go to the party. My mom was like, no, it's fine. We'll bring them. We'll just change the name. We'll call them chocolate souffle squares. So we go to this party and we serve the chocolate souffle squares. I didn't even know how to make souffle at that point. I just knew we had this gross batch of brownies. And everyone was like dying over it. They're like, this is so delicious. What is the recipe? And my mom's like, secret recipe, been in the family for years. And I was like, oh, wow. And they were a huge hit. People are still asking for that recipe. We're like, nope, and you're never going to be able to have them again either. But I talk about that too in my cookbook. I'm like, if your pie doesn't set, call it pumpkin pudding pie. If your cookies are burnt, they're suddenly cookie crisps. Cake, like, is a little too raw, chocolate fudge cake. Really just like embracing your imperfections and not feeling like you shouldn't even try something if you're not going to be perfect. And I think that's how a lot of people feel with veganism, is they feel like it's this label and they're afraid to take on that label if they are not going to be able to live up to it. So I think like Meatless Mondays is awesome, just ways for people to get their foot in their door and start trying things. And I think like really celebrating the small steps that the people around you take towards a vegan life is something that's really important. I know I have people come up to me all the time that are like super excited to tell me about the quinoa salad they ate for lunch, or whatever tofu cream cheese they picked on their morning bagel. And I think like really giving credit for those small steps is a way to help people to make a bigger change.
Thank you.
I didn't really have anything to say. I mean, they said it all. It's good stuff.
That's okay. I have something to say. So
Okay.
So I was just going to, we have dining halls at NYU, and we have plant-based Lipton this week, and you're welcome after the event to go, as long as you have somebody with an NYU ID. I was told right before the event. But these are small incremental changes a lot of campuses and society in general are looking at, and they're at the 10% mark, right? They're one day a week, maybe they're, one meal a day at the dining hall. And I remember I had a conversation with Humane Society representatives, some of whom are here tonight, and they said, actually making a 10% change is better than getting one dining hall to convert to a plant-based dining hall in its entirety. And these are really troubling questions for people who are ethical vegans, right? Do you sort of believe in this new terminology of just living a reduced animal-based lifestyle, right? There's a conference in a couple weeks based on that. There's a whole new terminology for it. Or do you sort of adamantly keep insisting, as sweetly and nicely, Chloe, as you appear with people, there are different approaches, right, to insisting. And I think there is a very large divide within the plant-based, vegan, cruelty-free, animal product-free community as to how you approach these things. So I'd be really interested to hear what people think about the different sort of also trends, that are happening out there. Maybe you have people you've admired in the past, or role models whom you admire and think that they approach things correctly or successfully. But also, are there people now that you admire and think they're doing a good job of reaching people and it's sticking, so to speak? So is there any sort of trend out there or an approach that you think is working well?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I think it all works. One, because nobody's the same. Everybody's different. You can't be like, oh, you go vegan now. That shit just doesn't work for everybody. It took my wife 6 years to get me to go vegan. And I was not, all the way up to that last day, like I was eating 4 chicken breasts, drinking 3 milkshakes, and this is one day. This is like I'm trying to put weight on. That's what I was doing. But it takes time. You have to meet people where they are. Give them some conversion foods is what I like to call it. If they want to, like I started, and then it took my wife 6 years, and then when I started, I didn't go like healthy. I went like, okay, I'll try it. Vegan hamburger, vegan pizza, vegan tacos, nachos, taquitos, fry those taquitos up. They're gonna be crunchy. No, but it just you just have to try different things because you can't force people to do shit because they're just not gonna do it. People rebel when you try to force them into a situation that they don't want to be in, or that they're not quite comfortable with, or they don't have the right knowledge they don't feel comfortable, they don't have enough knowledge to move forward with that. People just back out. That's just real. That's just what people do. It's a fight or flight, and it's instilled in us, and then people run away from it. And you have to take a gentle approach. And that's just the way to do it. I think yours is definitely the way to do it. A lot of us, we're stuck in this microwave society where we're just like, do everything right now. And that just doesn't work. You have to, with everything, when you're working out, there's no pill you can take to lose weight right now. You got to take your time. You got to figure out, you got to eat better, you got to work out, and then the results come. But, you got to keep it up. But it's just like, that's with everything in life. You got to take your time. All right, bro.
So with the question being, what are some examples of things that are positioning themselves in the right way that are really effective? I think when you look at what's happening right now with material innovation, a lot of these companies that are, in the next 5 to 10 years, the way everything is made is going to completely change. We're on the cusp of some of the most visionary, exciting material innovations. We're going to be able to pretty much grow any protein fiber in the laboratory without an animal attached to it. It's already happening, and some of it's already on the market. There's 3 companies right now that are making synthesized spider silk, where they looked at spider silk biologically, chemically, and they figured out how to brew it in the laboratory, so there's no spiders involved, but it's biologically identical. And the excitement that is around this material or these ways of doing things, it's positioning itself as superior, as aspirational, and as desirable. And I think that is a really smart way of looking at how to approach this in general. I think that you can have the most well-worded argument, you can have the most eloquent quote to reference, but if you hand someone a delicious plate of food or an amazing innovative material or a new way of doing something, that can be so much more powerful than any verbal argument or any book or essay. And I think that when we look at the psychology of shopping, especially for fashion, it's an emotional thing. It's not a rational thing. And one of the reasons why a lot of sustainable brands fail is because they burden the consumer. I really don't like that word. They burden the citizen investor with with the problems that they're addressing. And the truth is that a lot of people don't want to be burdened when they're going to sit down to dinner or when they're going to go shopping for clothing. They don't want to deal with all of your research and all of the issues that you're addressing. So it sort of becomes your job to address those things and hand over that beautiful object or that delicious plate of food.
Joshua, I want to underline something. So I lived in Berkeley, in California in 1988, I think, and it was a really different idea. There was veganism, vegetarianism, and it was actually a bit of an idea of you're an outsider to society, you're resisting, and you're giving something up. And what you're all saying, no, you're actually striving for something better. it's not in psychology of sacrifice and sort of renunciation, but actually you're gaining something, and part of who you are is you gaining something, and part of what you said, Tom, you said you are a billboard, or Joshua, you just look good. That's important when you do fashion. And there's a change, and I think that's a very important one, that you're actually participating in what you said, that the culture is aspirational, but you're saying we can embrace it and work with that. At the same time, you're doing something that is going to disrupt a lot of dominant industries. So in some ways you have to add something, and David, you were saying you're also disrupting more systemic things, that actually food is distributed unevenly and there are certain injustices attached. So I would like you so you're trying to say there's something better out there, and how much are you making aware? But we're really going to change the system. It's not that we're going to add a new fiber, but actually, let me just put words in your mouth, but do you want people to keep on just making fur coats and other fur coats? No. You want to ban fur, right? So I just want to push that argument a bit. You want to change a lot of things, not just say, there's also by Chloe out there, but you can also go to the steakhouse. You want to say, no, actually you can live a better life, and you want to disrupt an industry. So could you say something about that, how that's a different mentality from how these movements used to be?
All right. So my thing is, I like to talk about this a lot, is marketing, and I feel like this is going to touch a little bit what you're talking about. The meat and dairy industry spend billions of dollars on marketing, right? And they've been doing this for however many years. And that means basically marketing. We watch television, we get all of these advertisements, we look at it. This is essentially brainwashing. You're looking at it, milk does a body good, right? So, this is real shit. Like football players, guys who are bodybuilders, I'm gonna drink a gallon of milk, I'm trying to put on the weight, gain muscles, man. Oh yeah, no. But we're brainwashed to believe these things, and this is a system that was created by the meat and dairy industry to get us to purchase their products, to be consumers or citizen. What did you call it? Citizen investors in their product, right? But it's real, and so we have to take into consideration that, like, marketing is essentially brainwashing, and we've all been brainwashed to believe that milk does a body good, that eggs are good for you. But little do we know, this shit is going under the radar, that it's illegal for the milk company to say that milk does a body good anymore, or milk has calcium and all that. That's why they use protein now as their main marketing. Has anybody seen marketing for eggs anytime in a while? No. Are eggs healthy for you? Like, eggs have this, eggs have that? They can't do that. It's illegal for them to do that. And they can't say that eggs are healthy for you, eggs are nutritious, eggs have this minerals or whatever. It's illegal because it's not good for you. But we still think that eggs are a great part of breakfast, or milk is a good part of breakfast, when milk is considered one of the most toxic things you can drink. It causes instant inflammation in your body. But we don't know these things because we've been brainwashed via marketing and all of this other stuff, and these commercials. It's programming. That's why they call it programming, TV programming, for a reason. It's programming your mind. And you have to be careful with not only the food that you're digesting, but the information and the knowledge that you're digesting as well. We're still you're watching TV, and your brain is processing this information, and you're being brainwashed, and you just don't even know it. And it sounds like it's all hooky kooky, like superstition, or what is, like whatever. But superstition. It's real. It's real, and we have to take that into consideration, and we have to think about that when you're buying food, or when you're doing stuff like McDonald's is good for you. We have this. We're trying to clean it up, our health, but we're not going to tell you that, we got 100% ground beef or whatever. But we're not going to tell you all the other chemicals that come in there with it. They selectively leave that out as part of their marketing and all of that stuff. We have to. I feel like I got way off the question, but you have to take that into consideration, because that's something they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that, because if you don't know what is in the food, like now McDonald's just has a hard time, because you leave a McDonald's hamburger out for a year and it looks the same. Like, you have to know what's in your food, and they don't want you to know what's in your food, because if you did, then they would have to improve the quality of food that they're making, because you're not going to eat that shit. You're not going to eat the McDonald's French fries have whey in them, milk in them. They have 11 different cancer-causing ingredients in them, and all kind of other stuff. The last time I checked, to make French fries, it only takes oil, salt, and potatoes, right? But the reason that they use all of these ingredients is because there's a lot of them are subsidized, and it costs less for them to produce their food. And like, it's just so much. And they don't want you to know these things. They want you to think everything is good for you and all that stuff, or come eat our product. No. Educate yourselves, because they don't want you to educate. They don't want you to be educated. They want their consumers to be confused so they could tell you what they want you to buy, and you go buy it.
Mm-hmm. Just to kind of pick up on what you're saying, and maybe another way of looking at it is think about a fashion magazine. You think that the advertisers are the products, but really the way that fashion magazines operate, is to create these fantasies where all of this lifestyle is so aspirational, especially around certain materials like leather and fur and wool. But ultimately, you are the product that's being sold. You're being sold to the advertiser. The magazine's not being sold to you. You're the product. The magazine gets you to subscribe, and then they sell you, your numbers, however many of you there are, to the advertisers, and that's how they make money. So when you start looking at it that way, that we're the product that's being sold, that's true for television, that's true for magazine. It really changes, it kind of flips the script and empowers us to be able to see what's really going on here.
I think the good news with vegan business is just, it feels like we've come so far. I mean, every 10 minutes I see a new innovation or something on Instagram. I'm like, wow, we've come so far in terms of just, the veganizing that's happening in every industry right now. And it's great to see, like, just really mainstream businesses like slapping the word vegan on, hoping that it'll get them more customers. That's just where business is headed right now. But the good news is that as far as we've come, there's still so much farther that we have to go, and so much more room for innovation and creativity in terms of really taking animal suffering out of every product that's sold, and through food, fashion, entertainment. But it just opens up the stage for, so many creative minds and entrepreneurs. There's room for everybody, which is so exciting. So I think, the way normal business works, there's like competitors, and it just doesn't work that way with veganism, because there's so much ground that we're never going to cover in our lifetime, and we just need more and more people helping and doing it. So it really is an advantage for anyone looking to start a vegan company or has a vegan invention that they want to put out there, because whereas normal products, or even just like with, you talked about fashion magazines, with food magazines, it's like every year at Thanksgiving they just have to reinvent the wheel. How can we make the turkey different from last year and 2 years ago and 3 years ago? And it's like it's the same food every single year. So we have this opportunity to put, new products and new content out there that people have never seen before, and it's well received and it's so exciting. So I think it is, there is an advantage to being an entrepreneur or a business person with a mission, because you have, so much space to do what you want.
All right, I'm going to have you, Chloe, speak at the freshman address for the business school. But actually, I think that the space that opened up is really a key. You're saying you're not worried about the fact that you're disrupting an industry and there's going to be resistance. And David said, people are going to try to tell you a different message. And you're saying, just go ahead and tell them what you know so people can take their own information. I think the great revolution is that all of you have access to everybody on this panel speaking with you. That is a huge change. It used to be one magazine, right? So what you're putting out, actually, everybody can communicate here. And it used to be one magazine, a few magazines, someone owning that. So the story is a broader story. So that's what you're saying. You can put more information out, people can connect to that, right? And that's a radical shift. And I think to use that as a force for good, is a way to go, rather than to say there's so much against, so much headwind, there's so much of the industry. And in some ways, I think all of you are inspiring to say, yeah, there's a kind of food industrial complex. We're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on what we can do and change.
Right.
I was just going to say we had a panel earlier this year along with Environmental Studies and Animal Studies Initiative about justice at sea and aquaculture, and a question that came up, and I was thinking about it as I was sort of doing the last lecture for my course. Thank you to all my students who are here tonight as well. But I was thinking about what the course, sort of some of the themes that came out, and one was how we are controlled by governments, and our government in particular, in terms of the proposition that we can mitigate or control risk through what we eat. And if we eat and control our environment and it's clean and we can separate things, then we will be risk-free, and we're told how that's going to be contained. And the onus is really put on the individual. And I think that's something that Joshua was pointing to as well, and David was pointing to, that you can't really look at these systems on an individual basis or you will never dismantle them, right? That I think what's really inspiring about the four people that are moving in this arena is that they're facing things that are really difficult, and they're trying to dismantle the system, whether it seems like happy noise or easy sort of static to a system. They're really looking to dismantle it successfully and in very innovative ways. And so the question that was interesting on that panel was that as we were sitting up there, someone at the end came from our food studies program and said, I'm just wondering, you know, because you've spoken so much about aquaculture and seafood, what kind of seafood would you all eat? Do you eat seafood? And I remember sitting up there and thinking, I don't want to answer that question, because that's not the question. The question is not what we as individual consumers are doing personally and in a contained way, but rather how we're working together, right? So if someone is still eating seafood or chooses to eat a certain type of seafood, I don't actually blame them. I don't blame them. I hate to say it, but I don't. I think that it's much more about working together to dismantle in a much more, in a stronger way, a system. And so, Joshua, that really struck me, to think about how a citizen consumer can network with another citizen consumer to change an entire industry, not just make a personal one-time, one-off choice, right? So that's good to buy a Buy Chloe product or anything that you've put your stamp on. I'm a huge fan. But how do we all work together from different arenas to think about the larger issues? And I think that's what the question is, I had meant sort of earlier to think about is, are there movements that are really inspiring you, or people that seem to be approaching things from a multifaceted viewpoint? And I think something I missed is to say, well, you all are. You know, you might be working in one arena, but you're all doing that. And so is there something that you see, you know, right around the bend that you might say, I really endorse that and I'm really interested? And as I look out, I recognize so many people here tonight who are plant-based physicians. I'm not going to point anybody out, who are plant-based restaurant owners. Again, I won't embarrass everybody, plant-based publishers. And you're all spilling over into each other's areas, and there is a lot more synergistic room. I think, Chloe, that's a really good point, is that it shouldn't be a miserly movement, right? And so we shouldn't say in an accusatory way, what are you doing individually? The onus is on you. And if you're not doing this, then you're at fault, because that's just never going to work. So if any of you want to sort of say something about how you see possibility for dismantling a system or working more.
I think one of the most powerful tools that we all have today, that is the greatest thing since sliced bread, is social media. We all are able to connect with each other with similar ideas or different ideas, new and inspiring ideas, where we can communicate and show real data and be very transparent about what's happening in society. For me, I think that's the future. It's here to stay, and it really helps a lot of us, especially in the activist community, because we can show real data and real information, whether it be related to healthcare or animal rights, or with Joshua, fashion, and all of that. So I think you got to use that tool to your advantage, because it's going to take down a lot of these systems that have been in place for a long time, from TV programming, the way we've been conditioned to believe to certain communities and different religious thoughts and stuff like that. But that's the beautiful thing about social media. It's producing a lot of real inspiring people that's really putting a lot of great knowledge out there that's making people really rethink about their choices in life. So use that to your advantage, and I think that's where we're at right now, what we really need to use to our advantage, social media.
Q&A. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody. We're going to open it up to Q&A, but first we have to thank the Center for the Humanities staff and everybody. We really thank you for coming this evening as well. And so we're happy to take your questions.
So we have a microphone, I think, and so there are questions right there. And please ask questions. So we're going to edit your genre, so not long comments, but questions. You want to get up and stand in the aisle right there? That'd be great, by the microphone.
Go ahead. Hi. So this is drawing on some of what David said earlier, but I'd kind of like to direct it towards Chloe. And first, I'd just like to say thank you so much for the work that you've done to make vegan food not just normal, but cool and Instagrammable. My boyfriend is very not vegan, but he's the one now who asks if we can go to Black Chloe like twice in 1 week. I wanted to ask about kind of the accessibility of vegan food, because that's something I struggle with a lot as a vegan. I grew up very poor, and my family and friends, many of them still are, and they don't live in Greenwich or in Brooklyn where By Chloe or, Candle Cafe or Peace Food Cafe, these types of restaurants are, and they could never think to pay $14 for, a salad. And I feel so fortunate that I can and that these exist and that they are very hip and cool, but I really struggle to find examples of vegan food that is, or healthy food that is, affordable and is targeted at these kind of food deserts. And so, have you heard of things that are being done? Is there anything that's being done to kind of address that? Or where do you see kind of the vegan food industry going in that regard?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, and tell me your name again?
Emma.
I think that you're right, that at one point, veganism was this kind of elitist diet that, some people have like a old-fashioned stereotype of it being like exclusive or not really for everyone. But I think, with just all the work that everyone's doing, we're really all together breaking that down every day. And I think that in terms of accessibility, if you picked up a vegan cookbook, say, like 12 years ago, it's a long list of like scary ingredients, and a lot of people think like, oh, you have to, live near Whole Foods if you want to eat vegan. But I think, I'm definitely noticing more and more that, there are ways to make use of everyday, ingredients, whether it's grains or legumes, spices, things like that, to put meals together that can be vegan and can be accessible to everyone. I think that, the more people in the food space that are turning to vegan and plant-based cuisine, which is very rapidly, like even the meatiest of chefs right now, Jean-Georges just opened ABCV. I mean, like everyone is just jumping on the vegan bandwagon, which is awesome. I think the more that people are just creating recipes and making available content out there, so that, you don't need, necessarily like substitute ingredients, but you can kind of work with what you have, that's going to help. In terms of like tips for making meals at home that are easy and inexpensive, I think like one pot cooking is so great. I know I do that at home where I'll cook on Sunday, make whether it's like a chili or a curry or a stew or lasagna, and it can last sometimes like a week and a half if you refrigerate or freeze, and reheat batches in terms of smoothies in the morning. I make a green smoothie every morning, and I buy bulk or buy at the farmer's market with my ingredients and then like freeze them in batches. So I think it's kind of about being strategic, and this goes back to what Joshua was saying about, I mean, the good news is that vegan choice is not only the kinder choice, but it's also the smarter choice. And more people are becoming aware of like how much more sustainable and easy it is to follow. So, I encourage everyone in this room to, get their hands into cooking and create more, share more on social media. It's so great. There's so many vegan recipes online right now. You don't even need to buy a book. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Hi. This kind of goes back to the dismantling of the systems. And I guess one of the things that I've struggled with for a long life of vegetarianism and a more recent conversion to vegan is I really would like to disrupt the systems. I would like to use my dollars in a way that does not support the various lobbies that try and have policy that's unhealthy and unkind. But I wonder about how privileged it is to choose my diet and what happens when you go and travel and you're in situations in which, like, you're not in Paris or Rome or someplace where you have a lot of choice, but you're in somebody's house in Rwanda and they serve you goat because that's what they have access to. How do you kind of negotiate that cultural choice where your ideals of boycotting systems don't necessarily come into play because those systems don't necessarily exist in poor countries? Does that make sense in some way? Thanks.
I think it's an important question. It's a question of respect also. As you're a guest in the country, my daughter sitting right there was in China for 10 days. She's vegan. Stayed with a family who was not prepared to have a vegan in their home. And I think from what you said, they actually respected that because you respected them and they were able to accommodate and say there's nothing. They actually learned something. You learned a lot, I'm sure. But I think it's a matter of being respectful. Like everybody said, don't say I have a better way of living and you have the wrong way. And if someone is offering you a very special meal, that's a very important part of communal living in some ways, to just respect that and say, but while I'm respecting all of this, this doesn't correspond to my culture and my values, but I completely understand why what you're doing is a sign of great hospitality. So I think it's in every interaction, whether you are actually in Rome or even in Rome, you should be respectful, but I think I think your question is a really important one, and it's about privilege in every situation. In every situation, you cannot assume that somebody else will be on that. What everybody said, meet people where you are. So in some ways, I think it's really important sort of know and check your privilege, but in a certain way, do that everywhere and not just assuming that people would not get it. And I think there's an effort, what everybody's saying here, don't go in and say, I have a better way, but say, I have a way that I can participate with you in this life, right? That's my answer. I don't know. Maybe other people can join in because maybe you've all been to places where people said, I'm not ready to host you in this way.
Excuse me. Hi. My name is Carrie. I actually live in New York. And I've actually been to Africa.
So great. So maybe you can talk right afterwards. So if there's a specific response, that we appreciate that.
And Turkey. And I've had very specific situations that way. And I don't feel like I was privileged.
Okay, so important addition, thank you, yeah.
We need to address that question in a way where you're not seeing yourself as privileged.
Right. Right, no, absolutely, that's what I said, it's not to just use one category of approach, absolutely, thank you. So can we get the next question, thank you.
Hey everyone. Sometimes in animal rights activism, there can be some sort of problematic speech and imagery, like images of slavery juxtaposed with images of animals in factory farming conditions. What I was wondering is, in the animal rights movement, how do you think that we should address instances by animal rights activists of racism and misogyny as well as other types of oppression?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. So with this situation, there is a lot of correlation between the two, but I feel like a lot of people in the animal rights community, vegan community, they like to jump to that immediately, like, that's wrong, but you can't That's a great way to get people pissed off, bro. That's a great way to get people pissed off. And I'm just being real with you because, you know, a lot of people already are like, you know, you can't just because you know, they're like, okay, there is a lot of, okay, so the factory farming, a lot of the factory farming techniques have come from slavery, right? Like the castrating and a lot of the tools that they use, a lot of the stuff that they use, like the muzzles, you know, to keep the slaves from eating. That's the same thing that they use on the cows to prevent them from drinking their mother's milk, you know, same shit. And there is a lot to that, but at the same time, there's just some people's place, and I feel like a lot of people are trying to argue that point, and it's not their place to argue that point. You know, I feel like that's something you need to leave to someone who has. That's just not something that I feel like, you know, if that's not your don't say something that can offend people, because that's where I'm.
Yeah, I think what David is saying is basically there's things I can't say in Joshua's community. There's things that he can't say in me and David's community. So I think it depends on who's the communicator and how you want to. Because me and David can go to one of our communities that we're from, and we'll talk totally different than what we're talking now at the panel. You know, you have to sometimes communicate how those people or whoever your audience is, what they're used to. So I think it really depends on you and who you are communicating, because obviously there's things I can't talk about that I have no experience with, or my past family ties does not warrant me to do that. You know what I mean? So I think it really depends on who specifically is that activist communicating that information. But there's definitely a thin line, but there also is some strong connections between all of those systems. Yeah.
Well, just to quickly follow up. So when we see people like, you know, like a white person trying to say, look at this image of slavery, isn't this exactly the same as this cow in the thing? How do we address them? You know, because we want them to be vegan and we want them to spread the vegan message, but we also want them to do so in a way that's effective and inclusive and doesn't alienate people. So I was wondering how you think we should like address those people who are doing those problematic forms of activism.
What's your name?
Russell.
Russell, thank you so much
So Joshua, would you want to take that?
for that question.
Joshua, do you want to jump in?
Oh, I don't want to cut you off.
I was just going to say, so I teach a class that broaches a lot of these really difficult topics, and the sort of silence you heard from us when the question was asked was actually not one of discomfort, but I wanted to give people a chance to speak. There are so many activists in the animal rights vegan community who freely compare the Holocaust to the consumption of animal products, to slavery, to the rape of women. That I disagree with. And I think that, you know, at the beginning of my class, I give one trigger warning. There's really no way to talk about a lot of this without broaching some of it. It's incredibly difficult. But I would say, in answer to your question, that everybody, and maybe even us up here, need to think about our right to speak for a subject. And that's just an impossibility, really, right? To speak as somebody else's mouthpiece when you have no idea, right? And I don't think any of us up here really have any idea. And particularly when you start talking about animal sentience, we have zero idea, right? So to blur those boundaries is very convenient. It'll get you a lot of controversy, a lot of publicity. Maybe you're going to build a career on it in academia, right? And you're doing it on purpose to get people to start a conversation, and that can be very useful. But I think at the boundary that the flashpoint that you're asking about, I would stop there. I would stop before. I don't think it's a just comparison in any way. All four of those. Joshua.
I agree. I will say that I would try to approach the person making the comparison and say, I think I know what you're trying to say. I think I understand why you're making this comparison. Because what's being compared isn't necessarily the experience, but what's being compared is the system that resulted in that treatment or caused the harm. And often there are parallels in the way that those systems operate. But the experience of the victim is not necessarily what is the parallel. For example, I feel somewhat comfortable in my presentation about fashion history discussing the harvesting of prisoners' hair in concentration camps alongside the harvesting of Angora rabbits' hair in concentration camps parallel, because they were happening at the same time. In Auschwitz, there were Angora farms that the prisoners had to work on and shear the rabbits, and at the same time their hair was being sheared and baled, and often the hair was being mixed and then sold to suit makers, mattress stuffers, shoemakers. So there is an opportunity to highlight the system and say this system of oppression affected both animals and people. But I would stop before I would say what the rabbits experienced is the same as what the prisoners experienced, because I think that that's an entirely different argument to make.
We're going to take the next question. Thank you, Russell. And if I want to really acknowledge all of you, so if you can just frame it as a question, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name's Caroline. I would like to know, what's your advice on how to get into a career that would be in the vegan world? I wasn't, I became vegan in college, and for a long time it was, just made me happy, and I was to myself. But now seeing the world changing, I want to kind of, make a meaningful choice to do something not just for myself, but for the, just for the world. And the thing is, I don't really have too much vegan experience or courses, so I would like to know what advice you have for that kind of movement.
What's your passion? What's your passion?
Not sure yet.
That's okay.
I'm going to give you a poetic answer from the poet Rilke, so stay with that question. You don't know yet. And David's question, what's your passion? Find that. And as Chloe said, that is what you want to turn into your business, your entrepreneurship. But it's not bad to have that question right now. You're asking the question in public, so you're asking yourself. So just answer David's question. You can't do it right now, but you're getting it. So I think you're totally on the way, and Chloe's going to give you the business advice afterwards on Instagram.
So I was going to say, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to say, enjoy the place that you're in right now, because that's a really special place to be in. I imagine all of us have probably been in a place like that. I mean, I feel like I'm always in that place, but where you're just what am I doing? What am I going to do next? Who am I? And that's very normal and natural. I think when you want to create something and do something good, the worst thing you can do is put pressure on yourself or timelines or, compare yourself to other people or other people's processes. I know for me, after culinary school, there was a year period where I really didn't know what I was doing. And I remember people asking me well, I was dating someone who was what am I supposed to tell people when they ask what you're doing? And I'm that's so rude. Shouldn't be about what to tell people, but it can be really awkward when you're in this stage figuring something out, but you're probably on the path to really tapping into, what you have that's really great and special. So just give yourself the space to explore that, and you'll probably be surprised, how things work out, especially just given that, many vegan entrepreneurs are not following a path if you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll end up here. You're kind of making your own path. And so I think if that's something that's interesting and exciting to you, just kind of go with it and play and learn and, meet people and be inspired. And, you're going to create something that nobody could have ever told you, oh, this is what you should do.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're a little short on time, so we're going to take 3 questions at a time. So if you could just ask your question at the mic, that would be great.
Okay. My name is Jennifer. Hi, everyone. Hi, Chloe. So I have 2 questions. I like to cook a lot, and I want to, get advice of how to be creative and how to know what flavors go together. And my second question is, I love to cook, but I also went to school for nutrition, so I did learn about everything you guys are talking about when it comes to, the food system. I do live in the hood, so I definitely understand that. How do you focus your view?
I'm really sorry to have asked you to just ask the question, but thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, we don't get to
Hi.
answer?
No, you're going to answer. Yeah, we're going to take 3 at a time. And then yeah.
okay.
It's efficiency.
Okay.
Hi, so like my parents and my family are into this thing called like the Keto Diet. I'm not sure, but it's like they're basically eating like all this animal. Huh?
Is that where they put like butter in their coffee?
Yeah, butter
like,
and all the animal fat and stuff, and like, yeah. And so like they're watching all these like nutritional videos about like how like and like with all this like information about like how it's good for you and all that. It's like, how do you like combat like all this information that sounds so like convincing to other people, like, and like you know what I mean? Sorry.
Yo, I feel you. I feel, we gotta wait.
It's so
we gotta
convincing,
wait 3 questions.
even when
No, you ask a good question.
Yeah, it's like the information they give you. It's like all scientific and so convincing, and like for a moment you're like kind of like put off by like how to respond to it. So it's like I wonder how you would approach something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Number 3, my question is more about sustainability and buy it for life fashion and elemental products. I do my best to use as many buy it for life items as I can, whether it's an efficient product. So I have a water bottle that can be smushed down to tiny spaces that can be reused. I do my best to do the same for fashion. And where I get stuck are boots. I work in New York City and I commute here. And I have bought vegan leather shoes, and they seem to not last very long. The upkeep is not as, I don't really know a lot about upkeep of vegan leather, but I notice that they tend to kind of die after 6 months, and I can't have that with the amount of shoes. I don't really want to buy shoes. I want to have a minimalist home. I want to have 1 or 2 pairs of shoes, and it seems like the only option is to go for a good pair of leather shoes, and that scares me, and I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to figure out an alternative to finding vegan, high-quality vegan products that will actually last as long as their non-vegan counterparts.
Thank you. We'll answer that question first. Joshua, I think that is you.
Do you want to answer that?
Uli.
Well, what I'll say is I applaud you. What's your name?
Cassie.
Cassie, I applaud your effort to want to invest in investment pieces, and that's something that was commonplace 50, 60 years ago. This idea of fast fashion is the same thing as fast food. It's about driving an unnecessary demand and creating products that are planned. It's called planned obsolescence. They're meant to fall apart so that you have to turn around after 2 washes and go buy something else. And this is incredibly destructive. The fashion industry is the 2nd leading polluter in the world. A lot of people see fashion as something that's frivolous and silly and just about style and finding a good deal. It has enormous global impacts. It affects millions of workers, billions of animals, ecosystems everywhere. Historically, it's driven many species of animals to extinction. Something as simple as a hat trend has wiped out many bird species. So thank you for taking fashion seriously. Secondly, there are quality, long-lasting materials out there. They're more expensive, and sometimes they're more expensive than fine leather. And finding them can be challenging because this term, faux leather or vegan leather, is an umbrella term, and there's so many different kinds of materials. The materials you're experiencing are what we would probably call coated canvas. And coated canvas is where they take a sheet of canvas, which can be cotton or poly or whatever, and they put a liquid on top of it that kind of looks like leather, and then after 6 months it starts cracking and fraying and falling apart and ultimately disintegrating. But that doesn't have to be the way that it is. There are materials that outlast leather, that are better than leather. And some of the materials that I use for my brand, for my shoes and my bags, we use high-tech microfibers that are made in Italy and that are eco-label certified and that outlast leather. They outperform leather. But we're so trained to see leather as this ultimate object. Words like authentic and real and genuine, those are marketed terms that people spent a lot of money to get you to believe about leather. But so what I will say is, do your research, find a brand that's making vegan boots with high-tech microfiber. Look for microfiber, and that will be much better than a coated canvas, and start there. But I'm happy to talk to you in more detail afterwards about specific brands.
That would be wonderful.
Let's go back to the question of compelling information. Yeah.
All right, so the lady with the ketone fat, what is that diet? Whatever. Anyways, you can go to Nutrition Facts. Where are you at? Nutrition Facts, there you go. NutritionFacts.org. And I don't know if you know about that, but what's his name? The doctor who does? Dr. Greger does there's amazing information there. And there's also a lot of videos that talk about how, they have the, meat and dairy industry have research groups that actually, they pay them billions of dollars to create these falsified diets and these meal plans or whatever like that to, like I said, brainwash people. He's even talking about it in the fashion industry. The shit's real, and you have to learn about which ones are, you have to find information or studies that combat that, and that way you can present those to your parents and, more valid information, because there's Yale studies, Harvard studies, UCLA studies, NYU studies about why a plant-based diet is the best diet and why saturated fat or butter, like they're putting in their coffee, they're doing a study now, how saturated fat, which is only really found in animal products, or cholesterol, which is only found in animal products, they're cause erectile dysfunction. That's a great argument, and that's real, because if you look at Viagra and Cialis. Those are the get hard pills that they got on the market right now, right? And if you look at how those were started, they were started they're biodilatators, and all they do is expand the artery. They were made to help heart patients who have heart attacks and stuff like that, to help expand the artery so blood can flow through the rest of the body. Now, the smallest artery in the man and woman's body is the one that goes to the reproductive organs, right? And if that gets clogged up, then you have erectile dysfunction, and your body's just like a car. If the gasoline isn't going and hitting the pistons aren't firing, your car's not going to run. If the blood's not going to your piston, it's not going to fire. You ain't doing nothing, and that's real. So if you, I'm sure that's a compelling argument for your father and your mother. I'm just saying.
And what was the first question?
So the question about staying creative in the kitchen, please answer, Chloe, whenever you're ready.
Sure.
So you're gonna have more fun afterwards, right?
So I think you said about you were asking about you want to get more creative with flavors and make things more right.
Food desert, yeah.
Food desert.
How do you do that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. Right here. Oh, hi. Okay, I was like, the light's so bright, I couldn't find you. Yeah, so, there's a couple points to that question, I guess. First, in terms of trying new things and putting new dishes together. Like I said, use Instagram as a resource. YouTube, it's a great way to learn really cool, quick, new tricks. Even there's things that I don't know that I will just Google and learn something fun, whether it's different ways to cook a spaghetti squash or whatever. There's YouTube video for everything now, which is great. And I'd say just really have fun and play around, and don't be afraid to fail in the kitchen. I hear a lot of people that say, I can't cook. I hate when people say that, because everybody can cook. There's no one who can't cook. It's just whether you try it or not. And if you love to eat, you'll generally be good at it because you're gonna know like what kind of flavors you need to add. One thing I've really gotten into is like instead of like going out to dinner with friends or getting drinks, which can just be so expensive, invite people over to your apartment, even if it's super tiny, even if your kitchen's like a tiny little box, and try cooking something together. That's just like a great way to connect with people and to try something new and to kind of all work together. I love inviting people over to cook together. Oh my God, we have an animal here. And then in terms of like accessibility, I mean, you're totally right. We need more like healthy, vegan, high quality food that's accessible in all different kinds of areas. And I think, you know, everyone's working on that, and it, you know, should be a focus, especially for food entrepreneurs. But in the meantime, you know, patronize the places that do it. Like we have Craig from Terry here. Terry's an awesome example of a vegan fast casual restaurant that keeps the price point so low for the quality. Yeah. So finding places like that and supporting them is a great way to be able to eat delicious food at a low price point. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll take the last two questions.
Hey guys, my name's Sam, and I work in Newark, New Jersey as a medical case manager for homeless youth between the ages of 18 to 21. And also I'm responsible for a lot of the wellness activities that we put on there. And so trying to think how we can create some curriculum that kind of educates on the intersectionality of a lot of these issues, and not pushing one topic, but kind of helping them connect these issues and how they've experienced oppression here in certain ways by being homeless, and connecting them through fashion, through food, through all these different avenues, and creating some really successful curriculum that will impact them, maybe not creating vegans, but creating more thoughtful citizens.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so thank you as a wrap up. There are so many people here, super exciting. There are probably a lot of vegans here. There are also probably a lot of non-vegans here. I'm wondering if you had one piece of advice that would maybe inspire someone to make a change after today's talk, what would it be? Thanks. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, I forgot what the first question was.
Me too.
So in your area, find out what drives the kids. You know, like I don't know what area, what your demographic is. What is it, Hispanic or whatever? It doesn't matter. But you know, what are their issues, and then find a way that in meshing the two, how can teach them how a plant-based diet or a plant-based lifestyle, or, you know, look at how they used to do it in the old days. They didn't used to have problems with food. You can grow your own food, or just teaching them how a plant-based lifestyle can combat a lot of the issues that they're dealing with. In inner city areas, you said you're living in where food oppression is an issue. You could teach them about that and spark a fire under them, because once they learn that information, then they'll be the mouthpiece, and they'll spread that information to the people around you or people in the area, and people are going to want to know about that, and they're going to want to know about red zoning ordinances and how they structured this country. You know, how they want to know why there's healthy food in Fifth Avenue and then there's no healthy food over wherever, I don't know, in the hood, Brooklyn, whatever. You know, if you teach them that, then it's amazing how, you know, they can do the rest of the work, and they'll be your mouthpiece. In marketing, word of mouth is the most powerful form of marketing. So if you teach them and then you help them you create an environment where they can spread the message, or, you know, and to invite them to bring some friends and learn about healthy eating. There's ways you can teach them, you know, learn how to shop healthy. There's one of my friends, Tony Akamoto, she has a thing called Plant-Based on a Budget, where they teach you how to shop for the whole week. I think it's for your whole family or for yourself. I don't know. That's still, but for $25 a week, that's nothing. And so if you were to provide options for them to combat the situations that they're facing, like the lack of grocery stores or the lack of healthy food or whatever like that, you know, and that's how you can create the curriculum will be created around those tools that you provide, or you know, creative ideas. I'm sure these kids they're smart, and they can learn creative ideas that will help to restructure their situation. If you say these are some options, these are ideas, let's figure out how we can form them around our situation and to combat the obstacles that we're facing in our area.
Thank you.
Where did you go? Oh. When it comes to clothing, I think that fashion, the way that the mainstream fashion industry operates, especially luxury fashion, they operate through creating an affirmations of identity through exclusion, through an inability to access it. And I think that for people who can't afford luxury fashion, it becomes part of that formula is being the one who's excluded and feeling bad about yourself. And there's a big difference between fashion and style. Fashion is a system, it's products, it's specific companies. Personal style is just a way of visually presenting yourself and feeling good about it. And that doesn't necessarily require making purchases. What it begins to look into is, who are you? It asks questions. Who are you? How do you want others to perceive you? What is your identity? And how do you want to visually represent that? And that can be explored without money. That can be explored through free clothing. It can be explored through clothing that you already have. And if people can feel good about exploring who they are visually and how they want others to perceive them, that can be a mark of confidence without necessarily having to participate in fashion per se.
So do any of you have a suggestion for Rachel? Does one of you have a suggestion for how to, is your question to convince someone or to inspire
Yes.
to try something vegan, or to try?
After tonight's talk.
After tonight's talk, I feel like if you're not vegan, how many non-vegans do we have in this room right now? Raise your hand. Show yourself. No, right? But it's real. Okay, so try
Let's
this.
not let them out. Let's get them out.
All right. Now, we ain't going to jump you after the show. All right.
It's pretty convincing, though.
I know, right? I didn't even know all that about you, bro. I thought we was cool. I didn't even know you had that tainted history. No, I'm just like, the thing is though, it's like, all right, you see the panel of people we got up here, and a lot of people are afraid to go into a plant-based lifestyle or vegan lifestyle because, you know, there's a lot of stigmatism, or, I mean, it's like, all right, it's an elitist environment, or, you know, it's a white thing, you know, that's what everybody, it's race, you know, vegans are racist. Like, these are real things that float around, you know, or it's expensive, it's too expensive. Just, there's ways to do it. But it's just an excuse to fail, pretty much. So if you just stop saying but, like, oh, but it's too expensive. No, I told you there's a way you can go online and figure out how to do it. It just, you know, shopping and learn how to grocery shop to put yourself in that budget, and then just try it for a week. Figure out a way that works best for you. Try it for a week, and then literally monitor how your body feels. You know, and then ask yourself. So you have to build, measure, and grow. Build how you're going to do it. Figure out how you're going to do it, because the whole time you've been a meat eater your entire life. All your family been meat eaters. So you don't know anything else but how to cook a steak, right? Or how to fry some chicken or whatever. That's just what you do. So you have to re-educate yourself on, because you've been brainwashed, because that's what you, like, for example, it's a tradition for us to eat meat. And that's what it's grown to, because, for example, people, all right, I like to use this to explain tradition and what tradition is. So soul food is a tradition, right? Soul food, when you break down, so soul food, where it came from slavery. We were eating soul food because that's what all the slave masters gave us, right? And then, and before soul food, you know, people of color black people were, you know, we were healthy. And that's why they put us out there, because we work 17-hour days and, you know, go to sleep and go do the same thing all over again, right? But you flip it to 2017, and black people are 17% of the population, Hispanic people, same thing, but we're the number one people dying of heart disease, stroke, diabetes. You just have to change it and switch it back to, because I feel like I got way off the question, but I'm going to get right back on it. You have to know that, just try it and then and go back to and try something new, because we've been taught something that isn't best for us. And now I remember why I brought up the slavery thing, because it's a tradition, and not all traditions are good traditions. Soul food was a tradition. It was something that we were taught, something that we adopted because we had to. But slavery was also a tradition, and people don't know that. And not all traditions are good traditions. Just because it's a tradition doesn't mean we got to keep that shit up. You got to change. You have to re-educate yourself and learn some new things, because there's a lot of things like people used to beat their kids. Beating your kids is not the best thing to do, in my opinion, because it might work because it instills the fight or flight. Like you don't want to get that ass open, so you're gonna make something up and you're gonna try. But anyways. My parents used to beat me when I was younger. But you have to just try something new. Try it out, work and figure it out. Build, measure, grow. Build a way that's going to work for you. A system that's going to work for you. If you work 2 jobs, figure out how you can pre-prep your food. Like you said, use a one-pot cooker. Find that system that works. If you don't have enough money, find a meal plan that puts you in a budget that you can do that. It's simple. You can go on YouTube, Google, Oshi Glows. There's a whole ton of websites where you can do that, and you have to go search for this information, because no one's going to give it to you. You have to go find it, and people give it to you. You have websites. Everybody has websites. You just go find a website. It's easy. A search is a simple Google search. You can do that, and you'll be fine. But just change it up. Don't be afraid of change. What is it? The cave you seek holds the treasure. What is it? What's that saying? If you try new things, if you break out of that old mold and try something new, then you don't know what treasure lies on the other side. You don't know what benefits lie on the other side. Like your parents, where'd you go? They're putting butter in their coffee, right? They're trying something new, but they feel comfortable with it because they've been eating meat their whole lives, right? How about you try not putting butter in your coffee? Try the opposite. Butter is fat. So if you eat fat, the fat you eat is the fat you wear, right? 1 + 1 = 2. When you're dehydrated, if you don't drink water, you get dehydrated. If you eat fat, you're gonna get fat. I mean, that's just what it is. That's life. All right.
I feel like David, I think our sign language interpreters have never worked this hard. And I feel like they deserve a round of applause. And I would like to end by saying that this is the most phenomenal group of people. We cannot thank you enough. Really, we cannot thank you enough for coming. Thank you so much.